Hi, welcome back. Our previous lesson was on shift in the supply curve versus movement along the supply curve. Today, we'll be looking at equilibrium, where we combine both the demand and the supply curve to get our equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So what do we mean by equilibrium? A market is in equilibrium when the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded. In equilibrium, every seller who wants to sell an item at the current price can find a buyer, and every buyer who wants to buy at the current price can find a willing seller. There's only one price at which the quantity supplied equal to the quantity demanded. This is referred to as the equilibrium price. The resulting quantity is called the equilibrium quantity. Now let's consider a simple case in the market of apples, where the price ranges from 2 to 3 to 4. We can use this price and the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded to get our demand and supply curve. So let's focus first on the demand curve. When price is 2, quantity demand is 600, represented by point A. When price increased to 3, quantity demand is 400, represented by point B. When price increased to 4, quantity demand is 200, represented by point C. Now to draw our supply curve, we map our price to the quantity supplied at each price. When price is 2, quantity supplied is 200, represented by point D. When price increased to 3, quantity supplied is 400, represented by point B. When price increased to 4, quantity supplied increased to 600, represented by point E. Now we can see that the demand curve is downward sloping and the supply curve is upward sloping. Equilibrium occurs where the demand curve and the supply curve intersect, and in this example, that happens at point B. The price at which supply equals demand is the equilibrium price, and in this example, that is price 3. So our equilibrium price is equal to 3. Now the corresponding quantity at which supply is equal to demand is what we call the equilibrium quantity, and in this case that happens at 400. So at equilibrium, our equilibrium quantity is 400 apples. 400. So we see here that at prices above the equilibrium, demand and supply are not equal. On prices below the equilibrium, demand and supply are also not equal. The only point at which demand and supply is equal is the equilibrium point. Now let's look at what we call shortages and surpluses. That is what happens when prices rise above the equilibrium price or they fall below the equilibrium price. At price equals 2, quantity supplied is 200, but quantity demand is 600. When you subtract quantity demand from quantity supplied, you end up with a shortage of 400. Shortages here means that the quantity demand is more than the quantity supplied. In simple terms, buyers are willing and able to buy more than sellers are willing and able to sell. If we want to represent this on our curve, we notice that at price 2, the demand curve shows quantity demand of 600 and the supply curve shows quantity supplied of 200. So the difference here between demand and supply is a shortage of 400. When price equals 3, quantity supplied is 400 and quantity demand is 400. At this point, supply is equal to demand, which is the point of equilibrium. There is no shortage or surplus. On our curve, this is represented by point B. When price rises above the equilibrium price to 4, quantity supplied is 600 and quantity demand is 200. When you subtract quantity demand from quantity supplied, you end up with the surplus of 400. To represent this on our curve, we notice that when price is 4, quantity supplied is 600 and quantity demand is 200. The difference between demand and supply in this case is the surplus. Surplus means that producers are selling more than consumers are willing and able to buy. So this is shortage and surplus. Let's look at how the market gets back to equilibrium when it starts from a point that is higher or lower than the equilibrium price. So one thing we have to know is that markets do not always start from the point of equilibrium. However, markets always tend to slowly move towards equilibrium due to the interplay of demand and supply. The first thing we should know about how to get to equilibrium is that shortages cause the price to rise. If we start from a point here at price equals 2, at this point, quantity supply is 200 and quantity demand is 600. As we have noted before, we said this is a shortage. At this point, it means that there are more people willing to buy the good than the number of or the amount of goods that producers are selling. So it means that it's high demand on the good. That will push the price of the good up slowly to the point of equilibrium. The alternative case is when we start from a point above the equilibrium price, example at point 4. At this point, quantity demand is 200 and quantity supplied is 600. This results in a surplus. The surplus here means that suppliers are supplying more than consumers are willing and able to buy. So there's excess good in the market. So that is going to push the price of the good down slowly until we get to equilibrium. So the main idea behind equilibrium here is that when we start from a point above the equilibrium price, there is surplus in the market, and that is going to push prices down slowly until we get to the equilibrium point. And when we start from a point below the equilibrium price, there is shortage in the market, and that's going to push the price up slowly until we get to the equilibrium point. It is only when supply equals demand in the market the prices are stable and the market is in equilibrium. So this is all that we have today on our lesson on equilibrium. Our next lesson will be on shifts in the demand and the supply curve and how they affect equilibrium quantity and price. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.